It felt like torture. I was frozen and paralyzed in my sleep, but still conscious enough to try to escape. Welcome back, everyone. It's Leah Guy with the Modern Sage podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. This is season 4, episode 2. And if you have not listened to episode 1, please do so that you can catch up and follow along with this story. Some say it's been riveting, it's a cliffhanger. I'm telling the story this season of me purchasing and living in this haunted house for the past 3.5 years through COVID. And I'm telling the story for a few reasons. One, because it was deeply transformative and impactful in my own life. And it has pivoted the focus of my work from the depths of what happened there and the invitation for myself to step in more fully to my healing work. I learned so much, and I want to apply that learning for everyone in a way of storytelling so that you can relate this information for yourself. I believe it is imperative that we learn how to embrace our own darkness, to sit still in the discomfort, to heal the ghosts of our past. And whether you believe in haunted houses or not, whether you believe in this mystical, metaphysical ability to speak to spirit or not, I encourage you to listen along because I think there's something here to learn for all of us. I just want to say this experience was very challenging for me. And so I'll try not to repeat myself. I wrote notes at the time of the events because what was going on at this house was so bizarre that I knew that if I didn't write these things down, I would forget. And I wanted to remember. I want to remember. In fact, these notes and this experience not only has pivoted the focus of my healing work, but I've written a one-woman show that I'm preparing to deliver in 2024. I've also written a screenplay based on my life's true story and focused on the experience of this house as the transformative piece. So I'm really excited to share this information with you and let you be kind of the first in on what's going on. And I hope that you enjoy it and find beauty and hope and possibility in the mystery of it. And for those who are new to me altogether, I want to encourage you to follow me on social at Leah the Modern Sage and visit my new website, leahguy.com. Okay, so I'm going to read from these notes somewhat and ad-libbed when I need to fill in the story for you. Here we go. This old house. It spoke to me before I ever met her. It called me to her and almost seduced me there. When I arrived for the first viewing with the realtor, I could see the potential of her beauty, and it captivated me. The way someone once cared for her decades ago, or maybe a century ago, it was otherworldly. It was thoughtful. And when I stepped up onto the land facing the woods, it felt like stepping back 200 years. When I watch Outlander, that's exactly what the experience feels like. And it wasn't just me who felt that, others have as well, but maybe not with the same familiarity as I had. It was like I remembered this place, and I can't describe that, but I couldn't not be there. The picturesque gardens, the brick and stone Italian fairy tale like facade, the woods overtaking the back, offering complete privacy, yet still walking distance to town and to the canal and the river. She was situated in this very old river town named Lambertville, New Jersey, filled with history and arts and entrepreneurs and nature. It was just what I was looking for, and it's just what my heart wanted. The house oozed character. I felt a longing in my heart to take care of her and restore her and give it the TLC it needed. But I didn't know how to do it all. I'd never owned a home before, much less a 200-year-old home, or if I could even afford to. But I felt I had to. So I said yes. There wasn't another choice in my heart, although on paper, It didn't make any sense. Now I realize the house wanted me there. As I mentioned in episode 1 of season 4, when I was thinking about buying a home, I didn't want just any home. I wanted the warmth and the qualities of space that would let me be comfortable, but I didn't want a cookie cutter home. I didn't want just a place to live. I wanted to feel something and build something and share the space, as I always do wherever I go, with others who need a breath of fresh air, a positive vibe, or a healing space. I love to create beauty in places and spaces at work and my home. And as I also mentioned, being self-employed and getting a mortgage for someone in my income bracket was challenging, but this year it just lined out perfectly. And the price range, the mortgage, the charming town, the proximity to the city and the clients, it was all what I was looking for. And it seemed to be the start of a perfect new adventure. But let's not underestimate the adventure part. The house has a plaque on the front stating that it joined the Historical Society in 1864. But the papers say the house originated in 1838. It's likely that the house was built onto over the years, which of course it was. Clearly, you can see the additions, but you can also still see the original stone walls inside and out. She sits sturdy with an air of sophistication, perched on a hillside of bedrock with majestic woods all behind her. The trees canopy the house like a warm hug, but the interior feels kind of like an old farmhouse. Whoever added the elaborate stone path and the steps up to the gardens made quite a show of it. They clearly saw the value of the land. With the addition of the footpath spotlights and some of the other modern appeal that was added, it truly feels like being in a fairy tale. The woods are full of new life and old. Wildflowers and animals, dead tree limbs and new growth. There's plenty of English ivy growing everywhere and new saplings sprouting wherever you look. I haven't ventured through the whole hillside just yet. I don't think I have the right shoes for it, but I plan to once I find my internal bearings, which is taking some time. In the meantime, I gaze up at the deer and I look at the old skulls of the deer that were left behind. And I wonder when the old trees fell and admire the height and beauty of the ones still standing. A good wind makes the property howl. There's a might in this land, protection, and just enough mystery. Scary at first, then something magical and freeing comes with the sound. I'm finding out that the general energy of this house is kind of the same. It's scary at first, but the true essence is peaceful. Add a good amount of whimsy, a dash of caution, and a whole lot of depth, and that pretty well describes this home. I want to note again that the timing of my purchase fell at COVID. I left Jersey City and moved on Friday, March 27th, 2020, the day of the lockdown, and found myself here in what felt like a safe house from the virus. And I was really grateful for that. The move itself was tricky, but it was accomplished by 5 brave men wearing gloves and masks, and one was even spraying Lysol on his shoes on each and every exit and entry. It was a bit surreal because we hadn't gotten used to the new normal yet, but having one day and a 20-foot truck to load down from a 4th floor walk up in Jersey City into a 3-story home an hour and a half away, we were all focused on the job. I moved to Lambertville for one reason. It was this house, but I didn't know anyone in Lambertville. And as I write this 5 weeks in, I still don't. I figured with time, I'll meet some locals at yoga studios and the health food stores or coffee shops, the theater. But the pandemic lockdown has all but shut down the entire world, much less this quaint little town. Even the beautiful trails and the parks have been closed. So I've been isolated in this old house, with the exception of when my boyfriend visits. And as I began to explore the area on foot, I fell more in love with my purchase. Luckily, being in so much nature and essentially living on a private road, I was able to get out during COVID and at least explore the immediate area. Within walking distance, you could get to any restaurant or shop in the entire downtown area, as well as to the bridge to New Hope, Pennsylvania, another tourist attraction town, which is very quaint and cute, and a famous walking path, a hiking path, Goat Hill. There's also a waterfall at the end of my street, the Delaware, the canal, a towpath across the way. It not only the perfect location for me, but I figured guests who stayed here would have easy access and would be thrilled to stay. Yet the house needs an enormous amount of work. My boyfriend and I enjoyed the first nights here together before he had to return to the city. I stayed, of course, to get settled and find my footing. There was an initiation time of getting to know new noises, discovering which lights worked, which floorboards creaked, and grow familiar with the general vibe of the place. Overall, it felt good, but there was always this unusual energy that I figured came with its age. There was the uneven stone walls, the original windows, the extremely unique features, unlike any house I'd ever seen. The holes, the gaps, the windows, the rotten wood. It was more than I had anticipated. I was nervous my first couple of nights alone. I realized it was my first time ever living alone in a house, much less a big house with multiple floors. I'd lived alone in lofts and apartments and shared rented homes with roommates, but this was a first. And that it was in the woods made it even more scary. Couple that with the fact that I didn't know anyone around, getting comfortable enough at night to sleep was a challenge, to say the least. But little by little, I was able to get there until the items went missing. There was one night that I came upstairs to the third floor and I walked into the bathroom. And I'm relatively okay with bugs and things like that are small and harmless. But this spider that I saw walking across the bathroom floor was as big as my hand. And I had nothing to kill it with because I had just moved in and everything was in boxes. So I stood in the second bedroom and I had just had a bed frame delivered and it was in a tall box. And I got that big box over into the doorway and I slammed the box down onto the spider. Now, I hate killing bugs. I prefer to take them outside, and I try to do that whenever possible. But this spider was so large, I had never seen anything like it. It was terrifying. And I left that box on that spider and walked over it and around it for days. There were other little things like that throughout the house, which were irritating, but nothing that scary until the bat came. And the bat was flying around my bedroom with my cat chasing it. And I was there by myself, absolutely terrified. I took my dog into the bathroom and I shoved a towel underneath the door. And I was hearing in my bedroom the cat chasing the bat. And my bedroom is lofted with these old wooden beams. And I was terrified for the cat. I was calling everyone that I knew was awake at that hour and eventually had to call the police. And that was my first call to the police. And the police came over, and people say, "You called the police for a bat?" I called the wildlife people first, but there's a message on their machine that says, "If we are closed, please call the police." So I called the police, and the police came over and literally got a broom and a Tupperware and a trash bag and chased the bat around until the bat landed on my hamper and then safely got the bat in the Tupperware. I have a picture of it, and removed the bat. I have since put a bat house up in the woods to help the bats go there. But coming from the city and being in this old, decrepit house by myself late at night in the woods and having these enormous spiders mouse, the bat, many other things. It was a little much to deal with. But overall, I still felt like I was supposed to be there. There were times where I wanted to just bag the whole thing. But with the COVID lockdown, it kind of kept me stuck there because I didn't have a lot of options at that time. But I was having a hard time sleeping. Even though this small town is so safe, there's barely a need for police there, but there is one. There's police force. When I purchased the home, there weren't even keys. I literally signed the papers, went back with the realtor for the last walkthrough or what have you, asked for the keys, and they said there are no keys. The previous owners didn't have keys to the house. People leave items on their porches all over town. There's no issue. Everyone has each other's back. Within the first few weeks, I had 2 items stolen, and not from a conspicuous place around my house, but from a tucked away place around my house. The first was a skull. Now, when I bought the house, there was an old cow skull hung to the right of the front door. And it was kind of cool, in a certain way. And I know some people collect them and they're even worth some money, but it wasn't the aesthetic that I was looking for this house. And so as I began to clean up around the property and paint and so forth and try to make the improvements that I wanted, I moved the cow skull to the gardens. And these gardens are situated on the side of the house, up on the second floor, which is essentially 2.5 flights up from the road. And it's not a visible area from the road. And I placed the skull next to the house in the gardens, which means I had to crawl over the gardens and place the skull there. The first night I left the house overnight, I came back the next day and I noticed the skull was missing. And I looked everywhere, thinking in my fatigue and my overwhelm and the fear, maybe I put the skull someplace else, but I knew I put it there. I looked everywhere and there was no skull. And I ended up calling the police a second time. And the police came over and I told them about the skull and showed them where it was. And he kind of scratched his head and he was like, it's really odd. We don't have a lot of theft around here. Maybe from time to time in a car, if there's, a high ticket item left in a car that's unlocked, a tourist will come through or something like that. But, it's kind of strange. The next day, or maybe it was 2 days later, in another area of the garden, I had placed a meditating frog, and that went missing as well. So I called the police back, and they assured me that everything was fine and safe. And then he mentioned my neighbors. And I want to just briefly introduce my neighbors into this story. She went by the name of Zen Cat, and his name is John. And it was a house right next to mine that was probably about the same age. And when I purchased my home, I recognized that their home was even more unkempt. Overgrowth, trash, knickknacks everywhere. And I thought, well, maybe it's a hippie couple here or an older couple that just can't take care of things, but it wasn't, well, it was pretty bad. I was going to say it wasn't terrible. John and I, when he was visiting one time, decided to go knock on their door to meet the neighbors. Nowhere else around me is neighbors. They're the only house. And this is important to know for later in the story. So we go knock on the front door, and to the door comes this woman, and behind her, this man. And they looked so disheveled. She had on, I think, a house coat, and her hair hadn't been brushed in what looked like months, and circles around her eyes, and odd shoes on. And he looked equally as scary. In fact, I didn't realize it, but the day before we met them, I had seen this man walking down the street and I got a little nervous. I was on the phone with my father and I said, I think Charles Manson lives on my road. He looked very dangerous and scary. And it was this neighbor, John. Turns out they're both very nice people, but severely affected by mental health and addiction. and were essentially living in squalor. It was a very, very sad situation. So the police suggested that maybe Zen Cat had something to do with this. And so I said to the police, these items weren't easy for a 70-plus-year-old to access. It was hard enough for myself to put the items there. And what good would she have? We're neighbors, right? And he said, well, they are both challenging. And my advice is to, to not get too involved. Okay, noted. So a part of me just chalked it up to maybe she took them. I hadn't gotten to know Zen Cat so well at this point, but I will say that I don't believe it was Zen Cat who took my items. All of this was going on, and yet I still believe that this is where I was supposed to be. I've lived here for over a month now. I'm tired each day with more than one person can handle as far as physical work, but I'm eager and overwhelmed with every part of this home that needs love, repair, decor, security, not to mention the 3 floors inside with the 4th floor attic converted to a closet and the 2 exterior levels. That's a lot of steps to wear out my middle-aged body. You would think that would make one sleep like a baby. But sleep has been interesting here, to say the least. At first, I put it off to new sounds, an old boiler that startles, a new environment in a town where I literally don't know anyone, a backyard full of woods and a quiet road hiding behind a row of trees from the main street. All of these things had me believing it would take me a while to get comfortable and rest. I've moved many times in my life to new cities and situations, so I planned some time to acclimate, but this was something else. There was more going on here. A few weeks in, my boyfriend returned, and on a beautiful spring day, we started clearing and preparing the gardens. There's many areas of landscaped beauty here and many areas of unlandscaped beauty. But there's a main 3-tiered flower garden near the house that I just described, running up along the side of the stone steps. There's an upper garden area for wildflowers and bushes, and then a high garden with herbs and plants. Around the gardens are naturally landscaped wood-like areas. Some are almost park-like. Trails, found objects, vintage pieces, old cisterns, mixed ferns and rocks and shells, all on the land. And as we were clearing a garden, we found a gun. The gun was early century. The gun was cocked. I didn't know what to do with the gun. And it wasn't buried. It was kind of just under the first layer of soil behind a bush, down on the first level at the house. And of course, I was scared of the gun. I'm not really comfortable around guns. But we took the gun inside and I put a bag around it and I put it in a drawer just to kind of get it out of sight, out of way. I just couldn't make sense of the whole thing. Why would a gun from the early 1900s be here? And eventually I called the police again. Now, this town, there's 3,500 people in this town. And everyone talks about how friendly the neighbors are, how safe it is. And it is a beautiful community. I have lived there less than 2 months and I've called the cops 3 times at least, maybe 4. They know my name by now. And it wasn't just for normal things. It was all these unusual things, bats flying around and a meditating frog being stolen and a cow skull being stolen and now a gun. The police ended up coming and taking the gun and said that they would. I kind of wish now I hadn't have given the gun to the cops. But later that day, we were digging around the garden, cleaning up the leaves, tilling the soil, making it all nice to plant my new flowers. And we found teeth. We found many teeth, a jaw and teeth, many teeth. I don't know what kind of teeth they were. I wouldn't say that they were human teeth, but I don't know. They were really old. And it wasn't small like a dog's mouth of teeth. It was bigger than that. But it wasn't huge like, I don't know what's huge, like a bear's mouth of teeth. It was like an average jaw of teeth. As we dug around the garden some more, we found other items. Some of them are too grotesque to say. We found old candlesticks, a cauldron, a chicken feeder, some beautiful objects, some bizarre objects, and some just average objects. A few more nights in, and then the dreams began. The first dream, there were two men, one who walked away, and there were two women sitting behind me. It was like we were on a roller coaster. And in the dream, we were having fun. And I remember in the dream looking back and seeing these women, and they were smiling and we were laughing. And then the two men went missing. And then one of them showed back up around my left side. And I don't remember what was said. All I remember is he came in front of me and began violating me in the most extreme way. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced. The man in the dream wasn't touching me. He was hovering like a presence, but in the hovering, he was heavy. And it was as if he could reach inside of me and he got to all of my parts. It felt like a psychic soul invasion. It felt like torture. I was frozen and paralyzed in my sleep, but still conscious enough to try to escape. The man in the dream was torturing me in a way I can't even explain. I writhed in pain. I was desperate. Apparently, I was tossing and turning in bed. Breathlessly, I wailed in the night, "Help me, help me, help me." And my boyfriend nudged me awake and told me what happened. I have never had this kind of dream before. Nightmares, sure, but they couldn't hold a candle to this. And I wish I could say I never had nightmares like that since, but I can't. I'm going to leave it there for today. And I am so honored for you to share and listen to my journey. There will be much more to come, and I will see you, or you will hear me next Wednesday for the continuation of this story. For those who are new to me or haven't followed me yet, please go to my website, leahguy.com, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get inspirational and thought-provoking newsletters from time to time. Plus, you get a free 18-minute audio. Follow me on social media at Leah the Modern Sage. And if you'd like to check out my books and haven't done so yet, my latest one, Overcoming Toxic Emotions, is available in France, in Poland, in Russia, and of course, the United States, as well as the audiobook. And my other two books, Spiritual Journal for Women and The Fearless Path, are also available anywhere books are sold. I thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.